Okay, I know that some folks are still coming in. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. I first just want to welcome everybody to tonight's training. My name is Vashon Maltsby. Each of you tonight to designing and activating your outdoor space for and learning. Please note that this webinar is also being translated live in Spanish for those who need interpretation. Please make sure that you have chosen the correct room to listen in, English or Spanish. Both versions of this webinar will also be recorded and emailed to participants along with a copy of the presentation at a later date. Please note that all participants' microphones should be muted. This webinar will begin with the presentation and end with a question and answer segment as well. During the presentation, you can place all questions in the Q&A link located at the bottom of your screen and not in the chat box. Panelists and LIFT staff will do our best to answer all questions, and any questions that are unanswered will be answered in a follow-up email. Before we begin,
thank you, Vashon. Before I begin, I'm going to invite Carolina. We want to thank our interpreters for being here today. Carolina is going to give some instructions, and then we'll open room. Then Vashon, I might ask you to give some of those instructions again, just so we can make sure the rest of our participants can get them. Carolina?
Hello, everyone. Below on your Zoom screen, you will see, once the interpretation is activated, you will see the icon interpretation available, and you just need to click on the language of your choice. Hola a todos. Más abajo en su pantalla de Zoom, una vez que se active la interpretación, tiene que seleccionar el botón Interpretación y luego escoger la idioma de su elección. Gracias.
Thank you. I'll give Vashon a moment to open the interpretation room.
okay.
Okay. Vashon, would you like to share again about how the evening will go?
Yes, so the presentation, we're going to do the presentation. And I'd like to make a comment, and then there will be some at the end for answering questions as well. Just want to remind everybody to make sure that you are in the
recording in progress.
Sure that you are in the correct room to listen to the presentation, English or Spanish.
Great. Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Jackman. I'm the Deputy Director of Early Care and Education at the Low Income Investment Fund, also known as LIFT. We're so happy that you have joined us tonight for this presentation on designing and activating your outdoor space for nature, play, and learning with the Early Childhood Health Outdoors team at the National Wildlife Federation. Thank you again to our interpreters who are helping out in the Spanish room. We will share links to all of the documents that are referenced in this presentation in a follow-up email, and we will also share the slides is administering a big grant for facilities in the district called Access to Quality Childcare Grant. We're very excited to be doing this grant again in DC and have the opportunity to fund some really incredible spaces for young children and families and teachers. And we want to remind you that we have an intake form open. If you have not completed one yet, it's a way to let us know that you're interested in grant funding from LIFT. Right now, the facilities grant, Access to Quality, is open, but we will have others soon that are focused more on operating support and the continued recovery from COVID-19. But we want to hear from everyone now because we're building those applications and we want to make sure that we're thinking of the needs that everybody has right now as we build them. So I will share a link in the chat to our intake form. Again, we will share all the resources to follow up. And with that, I would like to pass it over to our fabulous team at ECHO. I'd like to get us started.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you all so much for being here. We're very excited to be here to talk about designing and activating your outdoor space for nature play. So my name is Jessica Ewell, and like Laura mentioned, I'm the Early Childhood Health Out Senior Education and Engagement Coordinator. And in just a minute, we'll share a little bit more about ECHO so you can understand a little bit of why we're here with you all tonight. But a little bit about my background. I have a background in early childhood education and also in family engagement. And I love combining both of those backgrounds into what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is making sure that all children and families have access to high quality natural outdoor spaces. I'm also joined by my colleague, Amanda Knight. Amanda, do you want to come on and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Jessie. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda, and my role with ECHO is working with childcare programs, schools, and communities that have public spaces to really help them reimagine their outdoor space and help co-create communities to transform their outdoor space. So thanks for having us.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. So just to share a little bit about what we will be talking about with you all tonight in this general topic of designing and activating your outdoor spaces, we'll give a really brief introduction and overview to ECHO and the National Wildlife Federation. And then we're really going to dive into how to design outdoor spaces for best practice. Then we'll go over some site examples from programs we've worked with, and we'll finish up by talking about implementation and how to actually get started if you're hoping to make improvements or changes to your outdoor space. We'll finish up with some additional resources, and then background to ECHO and why we're here with you all tonight. ECHO is a part of the National Wildlife Federation. They're one of the oldest and largest conservation organizations in the United States. And a big part of their mission is really to inspire people to protect wildlife for future generations. So with that in mind, it's really important and impactful that they've decided to specifically put a focus and an emphasis on connecting children to nature, because we know that when children have these amazing outdoor experiences in nature, they grow into adults that love nature and want to protect it. So what is ECHO? ECHO stands for Early Childhood Health Outdoors, and our goal is to ensure that every young child experiences nature daily for the health of our kids, communities, and planet. Why do we do this? Why do we focus on the early years of life? So this won't be a surprise to anyone neural pathways are developed within the first 5 years of life. So we just know that this is a crucial time period in a child's life for their child development and their well-being. We also know from years of research that nature is good for children. It's also good for adults. It's good for all of us. If we can make sure that children are getting that daily time outside in their nearby nature spaces, it can lead to these really amazing benefits. It can lead to increased physical activity, improved risk-taking abilities, reduced stress and sickness. I even feel that as an adult, if I'm feeling really stressed during a day, even just getting outside for a quick walk or just being outside in the fresh air can really help reduce some of that stress. So it can really have amazing benefits. And we want to make sure that all caregivers and families and providers have what they need to make sure that children are getting that time outside every day. So just a little bit about our approach. We work with preschools and elementary schools. We work in people's homes and community and public spaces. So thinking about parks, museums, libraries, all of those places where children are spending their time, we want to make sure that they have high quality, natural spaces. And then how we work. So our team is made up of landscape designers and early childhood education specialists. So we really have expertise in helping programs design outdoor spaces and then activate those spaces through training and professional development. And community engagement is embedded throughout our entire process. We don't ever want to come into a program or a community and say, here's what we think you should do. We really want to work with communities and programs, ask them what their vision is for a space, and then help them achieve that vision over time. So just a little bit more about our landscape design process. Looking at a space, taking measurements, seeing what's there, maybe what's not there, seeing what areas are sunny and shady, where's the water access, and all of that into mapping. Then after going through design workshops and engaging with staff and families and children, they create a schematic. So that's the big illustrative plan that shows a program's long-term vision for their space. And then we also help with action planning. And we'll talk a little bit more about action planning later on when we think about implementation. But essentially, action planning is taking that long-term vision or big picture and breaking it down into smaller, more manageable chunks. And then our activation support. So that includes providing professional development offerings and trainings. We really want to make sure that teachers and families and anyone who's spending time with children outdoors feels confident and comfortable engaging children in outdoor play. Every part of the decision-making process, and then providing ongoing technical assistance that might come up throughout the entire process. So that was just a little bit about ECHO and the National Wildlife Federation. If you have any questions, please feel free to put that in the Q&A link that you have at the bottom, and we'll answer all of those at the end. But before we dive into best practice, we just wanted to do a very quick reflection activity. So I believe you all have access to the chat. I would love if everyone could just take a moment and think about what was your favorite outdoor space from childhood. Think about that and go ahead and type that into the chat. What was your favorite outdoor space from childhood? And Vishal, encourage everyone to go ahead and just think about what space you're thinking about in your mind. I can share one of my own favorite outdoor spaces from childhood. I grew up in Wisconsin, and back behind our house creek with fallen logs. We would sometimes fall into the water. And it was a place that I felt like, I could be independent and go where my imagination took me, even though I was very close to home. So that's my favorite outdoor space. And I hope that you all have that thought or memory in your brain. The reason that we ask a question like this, oftentimes when we start our trainings or our workshops, is because tonight for, our hour and a half together, we're really going to be thinking about how can we create these engaging natural outdoor spaces for young children. So with that in mind, it's really important for us to think about why that's important to us as adults, why that was important for us to children, so that we can make sure that we're helping the children in our care be able to make their own memories and have their favorite outdoor spaces on their own as well. Practice indicators, and Amanda will explain a little bit more about what that means, but you can take it over, Amanda.
Awesome, thanks. And it looks like we're getting some answers in the chat, which is awesome. Yeah, so in this next portion of the presentation, we'll be reviewing our best practice indicators, which are all based on research from the Natural Learning Initiative, and how to create engaging outdoor spaces for children. So we'll be going through a lot of photos to show different examples of what outdoor activity settings can look like. But just keep in mind that a lot of these ideas can be adapted for different types of spaces and age groups, and can also be personalized to meet your program's needs and reflect your community. Next slide, please. So our first best practice indicator is providing a variety of activity settings in your outdoor space. And physical activity opportunities outside. But there are so many more types of play and types of activity settings that we can provide in outdoor spaces so that children have both more choices and a variety of choices. So we like to compare this to how you might have several different types of learning centers in your like a reading area or a block area, and how you can start to bring these types of play and learning outdoors. So some of these examples show sensory walls and tunnels, music play. In the corner, we have digging, so that can look like sand or earth play, which is a little bit more of sand and dirt. And we've also found that when there are more options for children, there's less boredom that typically leads to more challenging behaviors. Next slide, please. So our next indicator outdoor space that connects all of your different play settings. So we think of that as similar to how a hallway would function inside of a building. So research also shows that having a looping pathway can increase physical activity through wheeled toys or running around the space or going from play setting to play setting. And so these three examples can show what that looks like for different age groups. So from left to right, we have preschool, toddler, infant. In the preschool space, you can see that pathway's a bit bigger, provides room for wheeled toys like trikes so that friends can ride next to each other, and starts to connect all of those different settings around your space. In the toddler space, still having that room for wheeled toys and running around, still learning how to move at that point. And then in the infant space, while you may not necessarily while we typically recommend concrete for pathways with toddlers and infants, you can do softer materials like the poured in place rubber or crusher fines, which is like a compacted, really tiny gravel. All right, next slide, please. But we also know that pathways, especially concrete, can be expensive and there's not always room for them in different types of spaces. So you can also think about creating secondary pathways like stepping stones or those tree cookies in the photo, using mulch or that crusher finds to make a pathway. Or if your hope is just to have an area for wheeled toys, you can also do just a smaller pad of concrete or hard surface. Next slide, please. So the next indicator is providing a diversity of shade throughout your space. So shade is really important in helping to keep play settings used to shade outdoor classrooms or digging areas, gathering areas, play equipment, or just other large spaces. You can see some wooden structure examples, canvas, so maybe a typical shade sail. In the middle, the second to the left is a repurposed carport. So just figuring out different ways to provide shade that may be a little bit less expensive than big structures. And then the last picture on the right is a custom metal structure built by a local artist who wanted to give back to their community. So finding those partnerships to help provide shade in your space. Next slide. But again, we know that the large structures can be pretty expensive and only cover certain areas of your outdoor space. So starting to think of other ways that you might be able to add smaller pockets of shade into your space, and to keep that whole outdoor space activated and not just in one area. So trees can provide really great shade. You can also create smaller nooks or so these are just some of those smaller ways that you can start to introduce pockets of shade into your space. Next slide. So our next indicator is providing a variety of loose materials that are accessible to children. So loose parts are open-ended materials that can be used in a variety of ways with no end goal. Here you can see some natural loose materials like bark and twigs, sticks. There's some blocks, shells, leaves, seeds, and tree cookies. There's really just endless possibilities with the types of natural and manufactured and recycled materials that you can use that result in imaginative play and building and dramatic play. And another aspect to loose parts is just being able to provide some sort of storage that children can access. So you can see a table or some crates or some plastic drawers where children can pull out these loose materials. Trees are really great because they can provide many different types of benefits. This can include shade again, loose parts like the leaves and bark in the last pictures, but they also provide many different learning opportunities and sensory experiences that help children understand and connect to the natural world. So you can imagine the feeling of sitting under a tree and watching the leaves, hearing the wind through the branches, and talking about the growing process and the seasons changing and other ways that you can tie trees to your everyday curriculum. And that first picture shows how trees can even turn into their own little activity setting areas by creating a small nook space where children can feel like they're tucked away in their own little world. Next slide, please. So trees can also create really nice spaces when engaging learning experience for your children and families. Next slide. So keeping on the plant theme, having other types of plants in your space, such shrubs and grasses and flowers, can provide a lot of the same types of sensory benefits as trees. So things you can touch and smell and see, and they can be a really great way for children to engage with nature. So these specific pictures can show how you can plant grasses and shrubs around pathways. And in the next slide, you can also have plants in small containers. And say you don't have great ground to grow in, you can put plants in tires or raised beds, garden boxes, or in window boxes along fences to start to provide those experiences with flowers and sensory plants. Engage kids with watering and caring for plants. So next slide, please.
community groups. So one resource that we will have available for you after this training is our community asset mapping worksheet. And this is just something that we use as a tool with programs to really start looking at who's in their community and who can they partner with to go through this journey together. So you can see a little bit, it just goes through different types of community partners. So for example, it has neighborhood associations, any faith-based groups, the Scouts, local schools. And it's, again, just a really good tool to help you to start thinking about how can I engage with my community and how can we really partner in an authentic way. So again, we will share this document afterwards. Also really important to specifically think about engaging the families in your program. And this is going to be really mutually beneficial. So it's really important for programs and providers and teachers, and it's important for children and families as well. So when you're thinking about engaging families in that process of improving your outdoor space, really the main idea is that families should be seen as equal partners in the decision-making and throughout the entire process. So that means that they should be involved throughout each step. So there should be a space for them to share their voices and ideas. They should be able to learn about the project and how it's progressing and what it looks like, and then ultimately be able to help build out the space as well. So that really is going to create this shared ownership and partnership that's going to be really important throughout this process. So I'm just going to share a couple of photo examples. Survey. So this is just a screenshot of one part of a survey that our programs often send out to their families. And you can see that it just asks families a few different questions. So it asks what you like about the current outdoor play area, what don't you like, and what would you like to see added or changed about the current outdoor play area. So it's really simple. It's just a way to start gathering ideas, get families thinking about the outdoor space, and really provide a way for them to share their voices. So this can be a really good first step to starting to partner together with families and community members. A couple things that can be helpful just from when we've seen programs send this out. The first is that this example of the survey is a digital copy. So this is sent out with a link and families can fill it out and it's all online, which for a lot of people is a really great and accessible way to share their voices. But for some people, sharing with a virtual and then always thinking about making sure that surveys and resources that you're providing throughout your journey are in the language that your families speak. And we've always found that to be really important as well. So this is another example of a way that we've seen programs engage with their families throughout the process. And this is a photo from a child care center. And you can see that they created this bulletin board as a visual way to communicate with families and share their journey. So you can kind of see it in the middle, but they have their full schematic design plan up on the bulletin board to share what their long-term vision is for the space. And then they also had photo examples and details for families to see, this is the goal for what is going to be happening in my child's outdoor space. So it's just a really nice way to visually connect with families and provide that opportunity to communicate. Plan at the top, just to share with families what part of the process is happening and what that looks like. But what I also like about this example is they have this little page up that says, be a part of the change, join the fun, no skills needed. So I like that they're offering opportunities for families to be involved in building out the space in whatever that looks like. So again, it's communicating with families and providing those shared opportunities to be a part of this process together. Another way to share your vision and collaborate with families is to host a family or community presentation. So again, this can be a very collaborative process. This is an opportunity for you to be in the same space with families and community members and say, here's what we'd like to do in our outdoor space. Ask families what they'd like to see and really be able to share feedback throughout the process. First of all, it's that families are sitting in their child's room where their child is spending time each day. So I think that that can be a really special thing for families to do, to really be in a place where their children are being cared for and learning each day. Another thing that these programs did is they actually took the participants and families out to the outdoor space during the community presentation so that they could all be in the space together. They could talk about what the plans were, ask for feedback, and they really made it that collaborative process. So after all of the planning and collaborating with families and community members to create that design plan, action planning to figure out those next steps, you're at the time when you're ready to start making physical changes to your space. So a really great way to continue that partnership with your families and community members is actually to build the space out together. And a nice way to do that So obviously your families, we just talked about that, but you could also invite corporate groups, the Scouts, local businesses, any student groups, organizations, really anyone who's in your community. They can all be a part of this process. What I do like to always just note here is that as we talked about, it's really important to establish that true and authentic relationship with your families and with your community partners. So that means that they're involved from the start, they're able to give feedback on the process and on the design. And you're not just calling them at the end to build out the space. And again, that really just creates that shared process and that shared ownership of the outdoor space and the improvements. So just thinking about how to host a volunteer build day. Again, this can be a really great way to make changes and have that communal event or experience all together. So if right away, organizing, supporting people as they're actually building out the different settings. You'll want to think about installation. And then also we really like to emphasize cleanup because it's so important and you don't want to just have 1 or 2 people left at the end of the day. So prioritizing cleanup is always really helpful. Some additional tips and tricks for hosting a volunteer build day. We always recommend having a sign-in sheet with contact information. Again, that's really important for sending thank yous and creating that continued relationship with community members. You could think about having liability waivers just in case. We always recommend making sure you have enough materials and tools. So that's a part of that planning process. Thinking about all of the different settings that you'd like to make in the volunteer build day, just make sure that you have everything that you need because there's nothing worse than 2 or 3 people needing shovels and that there are always people that they don't even really different skills. So it's thinking about, some people might want to build, they might want to build a garden bed or something else. Other people might not want to do that. They might want to garden or weed or paint. So thinking about those different skill sets and also distinguishing between contract labor that needs to be done by contractors and just volunteer support that anyone can help with. Since we're thinking about, places where children are cared for and spend their time, it's always good to provide childcare if you're able to, so that families are able to attend and have their children have a place to go. I already mentioned allowing ample time for cleanup. So again, just remembering that that's going to be an important part of that process. And then think about installation. So sometimes at a volunteer build day, you might be creating different settings that aren't ready to be installed right away. So just it up on the screen, having shady areas for people to take a break. That's just going to help keep people comfortable while they're helping out in your space. But you could also think about, could you provide snacks for people, making sure that you have water access, and just all of those pieces that are important for keeping people comfortable. And then sending thank you notes. So again, trying to build that long-term relationship with people. Thank you notes can be a really nice thing to send out to people who have really been helping you build out this space. And just a reminder, again, with everything that we're talking about, this is an ongoing process. We do think about change over time. This is not something that'll happen right away, but we also know that small changes can make a really big difference. So when we're thinking about volunteer build days, when Amanda shared all of the different examples of the different programs we've worked with, it can feel a little bit overwhelming to see programs who've children. So I just wanted to emphasize that now that we've gone through talking about the indicators and the examples and also talking about implementation. So we have about 25 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we leave ample time for question and answer. And I know that I saw some in the Q&A section. So I would love for everyone to just take a few minutes before we move to Q&A to do a little bit of reflection about everything that we just talked about. So I know that you all have access to the chat. I would love if everyone could just take a minute to reflect and think about, after everything we just looked at, what ideas do you have for improving your outdoor space? And then maybe what's an immediate action you could take to improve your space? So don't feel like you need to type a lot, but if you'd be willing to just type a thought or an action item into the step or into the chat, or just something that you'd like to do to your outdoor space. Your own program. And just want to confirm, I know I've seen people commenting. Do folks still have access to the chat?
Yes, here they come.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I know it takes a minute to type your thoughts, so just wanted to double check. But please feel free to go ahead and post your thoughts in the chat, just a little bit about your reflection of what you'd like to do in your outdoor space, or if there were any ideas that really spoke to you. And we'll just take another minute to reflect. Okay, and I'm starting to see some really great ideas in the chat, so please feel free if you're typing. Opportunities, grass and flower pots. I already have my plan ready, that's great. Adding more shade and planting boxes and natural play materials. Get some garden beds into DC programs, absolutely. Reconstruct our garden, have a dirt area with plants and a climbing space. Remove cement, I think to put in vegetables, I think I'm reading that correctly. Garden walls and walk pathways. Artificial grass and reconstruct my garden. Create a mini garden. Oh, thank you. I think removing the cement and planting vegetables was a translation. More gardening opportunities and climbing space. Increase playground space. Create a mini garden, vertical garden, gross motor space. Yeah, these are all really great ideas. And I think this is a question. And then I also see garden and climbing space. Great. Thank you all so much for reflecting. Please feel free to keep putting your thoughts in the chat. I see another one just came in. Thinking in multi-purpose areas, classroom space, gardens. Yeah, so these are all wonderful. I highly encourage you to keep putting your thoughts in the chat. It's helpful for us to see what you're thinking of, and it's also helpful for everyone to see, what ideas we're looking at and be able to learn from each other as well. So I guess, Vishan, I would ask you, we have a couple resources that we can share at the end and our contact information. Do you want us to share those now and then go into Q&A, or do you want to do Q&A and then finish up with some resources?
If it's okay, I'd like to do Q&A and then the resources at the end.
Sure, that sounds great.
Do you want to start with the first one that you
that I don't have? In general, we know that we need to look for plants that might be toxic and make sure that those are not in spaces where children can access them, because we know that children put everything in their mouths. I would say that this is a little bit specific by where you live and what your state is, because obviously things grow in different places. So I know in Colorado, we have some resources about, non-toxic plants and a resource for that. I would think that exists in every state, but I would have to do a little bit of research on that. But Amanda, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so everything you just said, but I also use this resource online. I will put the link in. So this online database for plants are specifically plants that you can use for play and outdoor space. We want to see the types of play value that they provide. So I really love that resource for plants for play.
Great, thanks, Amanda. And thank you for that question. It's a good question. Do we have access to the questions?
Right now, a lot of the questions were sort of logistical ones about LIF, and actually maybe I can answer some of them live. So again, this presentation, it was initially designed for a Washington, D.C. program, but we're very happy to have invited people from other regions to join as well. We will work on getting language translation for any languages besides English and Spanish in recordings. So please stay tuned for information on that. As long as you registered, you'll get information. And there were a couple questions just about resources, obviously, for funding projects. And that is what LIF does. And so if you are in Washington, D.C., offices where we can route you to the appropriate people who can explain the different products we may have available based on your geography. And the reason we may have different things in different places is because we do get funding from state agencies, governments, and maybe even local philanthropy. So it differs from place to place. So we will make sure that everyone who joined us here today has information about LIFT's products. Other questions? I have the question and answer tab open. I was expecting them to fly right in. Let me see if there was anything in the chat. I don't see any more coming in. Do you want to talk a bit about the resources and maybe the people who
section, and I can answer them as they come in. But in the meantime, we just wanted to share a few additional resources and also our contact information. So this is our website. It's www.nwf.org, and this is where we house all of the resources that we're about to share. So the first thing that we just wanted to point out is that we do host virtual professional development offerings, and you can find those on our website. They're around the design of outdoor spaces, but also about the activation and programming and how to engage children outdoors. Then we also have different resources on our website to support you in activating your outdoor space and also making improvements. So a few of the things that we talked about today, especially when thinking about different activity settings and how to create that variety. Sometimes there are things that you can create on your own. We have them for a variety of different settings. The one on the screen is logs, but we also have mud kitchen, other settings as well. And it really just gives instructions on, what do you need to create these settings, and then how can you make them? So that's a really helpful resource, and it lives on our website. The other resource that I just wanted to mention is called Nature Play at Home. And this is a guide that really goes through just different ideas to create variety in outdoor settings in whatever your outdoor space is. So this works really well in backyard settings, but I'd say that it's applicable to most outdoor environments as well. So this might not be applicable, so I will defer to Liv on this about certificates and evaluation, but just wanted to bring that up if that's something that you all will coordinate. And then I also just wanted to leave you with our contact information. So please feel free to send us an email if anything pops up afterwards, or if there's anything that you would like to share. But I think that is all we have. Laura and Bashan, anything else that you'd like to share or any questions that came in?
I don't see other questions. I thought I saw one, but I don't see it anymore. So I'm not sure. But I just want to thank you both for a wonderful presentation. The photos, I mean, oh my goodness, it just makes me want to just run out and play. I just really appreciate you taking the time to, to spend with us this evening. And then as Laura mentioned, we will, follow up with recordings for everybody. Thank you for posting your contact information. I did want to check, and Laura, you can help me with this if possible. Grant opportunities or help with finding spaces, if we can provide that information for them. I do have some.
Typing it in the chat as we speak.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I think I know that someone did ask a question about, like, getting verification that for PD training, professional development. So Jessica, if you could just touch on how they can get a certificate or to follow up from today's training.
Sure, absolutely. So Laura and Vishan, do you all have the list of attendees from this training? Okay, perfect.
We do, yeah.
Yep, so we do have certificates that we can issue. So I will go ahead and just work with Laura and Vishan and get that list, and I'll send
Great, thank you. There will be a survey at the end of the training. So if providers would be so inclined to kind of let us know how we did, and if you think there are things better, please let us know. We all want to work to improve as much as we can. We want to continue to thank you for what you do for children and families each day. And we also look forward to supporting you. And we hope that you all have a great evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for having us. We're so happy to be here, and it's been great getting to chat with you all tonight. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Amanda. Bye, everyone.